What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to the Game Time Guru. Today, we are breaking down fantasy sports and the way that they make us crazy. So,
what time is it? Game Time Guru!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Game Time Guru. I'm your host, Shane Larson, as always. Want to make sure you guys know where to find me at social media. Find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Find me there. And also, as you already know by now, if you've been paying attention to the podcast, you can find me on Bronco Nation News each week doing a pregame video podcast for them as well on a Facebook Live feed. So go over to Bronco Nation News Facebook and like the page and follow it so you can get all the updates when we go live for the pregame podcast. The day before the game is typically when we'll be doing that. As you know, you heard him in the beginning. I got Myles back with me. Myles, thanks for joining me again. I appreciate you coming onto the show.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me back on. I'm excited. Love this topic.
Dude, this is going to be really fun today. But first, we need to talk a little bit about what you've been doing with 60 Days to Living. Last time we talked about it, you had just I think you were in the second week of your 60 Days to Living vlog. Where are you at right now with it?
So today is day 48. I was going to start doing a podcast, but then I was like, I'm going to do a daily vlog just to kind of keep myself accountable. And 47 days down, and today's 48. So, yeah, almost halfway done with the 100-day video challenge.
Dude, halfway done. So by the time this actually launches on Friday, you'll already be halfway done. Past 50, right?
Yeah, should be.
Dude, that's actually really impressive. Anything you've learned from it so far in the first half of your 100-day challenge?
That it's hard to keep creating content, right? So, to continue documenting, because you just forget, you don't want to be caught up having to film everything, so you're just enjoying life. But then at the end of the day, you're like, crap, I got to make a video, and you don't have any content. And so it's like, well, I guess they're going to get me talking into a camera.
They're going to get what they're going to get.
Yeah. So,
but you know what, though? It's been entertaining watching you. Every day there's something new. Even if you don't think there is, there's always something new that you bring out, and something that you've learned or whatever, or if you're sick that day. What have we learned? CC brought it up just last week, how he learned about you went to the store. What is it called?
Buyer and heat.
Yes, buyer and heat.
Yeah.
We learned about that when you were sick.
Yeah, because it's like a marketing term. So when someone goes to a website, the key is to just keep putting stuff in front of them, because they're there to solve something in their life. So you just keep hitting them with more and more stuff. I went to the grocery store and I just kept buying more and more cold medicine because I was in buyer and heat, because I just wanted to get over my cold. So yeah, I guess maybe you learned something that day.
Dude, see, every day there's something new. Okay, so if you haven't followed him already, go to his YouTube channel. You can follow him on Facebook as well. It's 60 Days to Living, the number 2. Follow Myles' Facebook and YouTube vlog that he's been doing, vlog with a V. Make sure you check it out, as he's almost halfway done, and he will be halfway done by the time this posts with his 100-day challenge. So, what time is it? So, all right, man.
What time is it?
Let's do a little bit of a fantasy checkup real quick.
Yeah.
Do you have any fantasy teams going on right now, or you just finish up with one?
No, so this is the first year probably since I was in middle school that I don't have a fantasy football team going on. I'm not doing any fantasy basketball. I really don't have a ton of time to focus on those things, but
right.
One thing I'll never stop doing is I'm in a fantasy baseball league, and it's like a dynasty. So
what does that mean?
It means you keep players. You roll over players each year. It depends on the league that you're in. So in the one that I'm in, we only keep 7 from our team going into each and every year. There's some where you can keep 15 or 20, and you can keep minor league players. But this one, you keep 7 players. So you're always trying to see if they're getting injured during the off season, and because of that, you're always willing and dealing during the off season. So it's fun. It's you're trading for draft picks and players, and it's a lot of fun.
It's really exciting. I don't play fantasy baseball, so I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know that you're pretty much, into that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because you're always checking it out. For fantasy football, though, you want to know what my record is? I have 2 leagues. You want to know what my combined record is?
1-6. Well,
there's been 5 games on each one. I am 2-8.
That's awesome.
0-5 in one of my leagues, and and it's really frustrating because yesterday I lost in fantasy, and I also had Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback in that same league. And so not only did he beat my Cowboys, but he didn't really necessarily help me. He's the highest scorer on my team, but he didn't help me win. I get frustrated with fantasy sports because I'm sitting here rooting for Aaron Rodgers, but the problem is he's playing against the Cowboys, right? Have you ever experienced anything like that where you start rooting for guys that are playing against your team, whether it be in baseball, like fantasy baseball, or even in fantasy football?
Not really, because I'll bench. Like, I can't. Also, like, I'll bench someone if someone's going up against the Niners. Like a couple years ago, like when they were good and I was into fantasy football, like if someone was going up against the Niners, like Ben Roethlisberger or Matthew Stafford, like I'm not playing them. I can't cheer for them against. Right. But then you also lose in fantasy sports, right?
Yeah,
so like I've made some stupid trades in fantasy baseball because.
Sorry, we had a couple technical difficulties here. So you said because what?
Like because of, like I don't even know what I was saying.
Corey something?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, I forgot where we were at. No, because of like my loyalty to a team, I've made some stupid fantasy baseball trades. So Corey Seager, he's probably one of the best shortstops in the league, but he's probably a top 30 fantasy baseball player. Plays for the Dodgers, my favorite baseball team. And Jose Altuve, probably a top 3 fantasy baseball player. Had him on my team, traded him, and a draft pick to acquire Corey Seager. So a very stupid trade on my part, but I needed to have Corey Seager on my team just because he's a Dodger and I'm a Dodger fan.
See, it causes us to have like we start thinking irrationally, I think. Like, and we start, well, you don't, but in the sense of a true fan, you don't, but in the sense of a fantasy like player or whatever you want to call yourself, fantasy fan, then you're not thinking smart, like to win your fantasy league. So it's very hard to find the same, like you can't find a passionate true fan of their team and then a passionate true fan of fantasy. Sometimes they don't mesh well because you got to pick one or the other. And that's what I was running into with that Aaron Rodgers situation, though. I was really frustrated because my team sucks so bad, and I knew he was going to be the only one to put up points. And I knew he was going to put up points against the Cowboys because our secondary sucks. So it was like, oh, okay, well, he'll put up points. I was still hoping we'd win. So it's like, oh, I hope Aaron Rodgers throws for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, but I hope the Cowboys win.
Yeah.
Instead, we got 300 yards, whatever, how many touchdowns, and
I
one.
hope I eat this cookie and lose weight. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, this Tim Tam.
Yeah.
This Tim Tam. Is that what they're called?
I don't know.
What is it called? The Tim Tam?
Yeah, Tim Tam.
I just had one of those. We're going to the gym tomorrow, though.
Yeah, that's great.
It's going to be the first time. So when you guys hear this podcast,
I'll be down 10 pounds.
3 days. Myles has this diet that he's going to put us on. And it's the
Water.
Tim Tam. Okay. Anyways, so I honestly believe that like this whole idea of fantasy sports has pretty much ruined the sports fan. Like what it causes you to do, it causes you to be irrational. So I always said this about like even like sports betting. Sports betting is the same situation. Like have you ever like been sitting there and it's kind of like we were just saying, Aaron Rodgers throws for this many touchdowns, hope they still win. But it's like you got a receiver that's starting and you're like, it's like 3rd down and 1 and they're up by 2 touchdowns. And you're like, why aren't they throwing the ball? Like, they need to throw the ball. Or it's 4th down, and you're like, why are you kicking field goal? You should go for it. Like, have you ever had that happen to you in any of those situations, especially with fantasy?
In fantasy, yeah. And then in sports betting, I remember. So Shane and I started doing sports betting, I think, when we were like 18. We both just, like, he was done with high school. I was done with high school. And we were watching college football over at my dad's house. And we're yelling at the TV. Like, we had just started, and we'd placed bets. And it was, I think, our first weekend. And we're just screaming at the TV, like, you idiot, what are you doing? And my dad's like, who are these teams? Like, why do you guys even care? And I was too scared to tell my dad what I was betting at the time. And so we're just like, no reason, just we hope they win.
Oh, yeah, dude.
But no, and it did that for years. Like, I remember Tom Brady, like, all he had to do was, I can't even remember, but yeah, there's lots of them. Fantasy and sports betting.
Let me go because they do run hand in hand. Like fantasy and sports betting, like they had so they do run hand in hand. People don't think that they do, but they kind of do in the sense that like a lot of people pay into their fantasy league.
Yeah,
so
I pay $50, and
exactly
my payout's like $450 for the winner.
So in a sense, it is like sports betting, right? And they had DraftKings and all those different fantasy leagues that came out about it. Like and so they do run hand in hand. So we're gonna talk about this for a second. I want to talk about a memory. You just brought it up. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but this is hilarious. Okay, so that first weekend that we're doing sports betting, I'm at your dad's house, and Tulsa was playing. It wasn't even Tulsa. It was Tulane was playing LSU.
Oh yeah.
And they had to lose by like
63.
It was like 20. No, it was like 40 something points or something. Or they were like a 41 point spread. I think LSU was like a 40 point spread, and that was the year they beat Ohio State in the national championship. So they were actually pretty good. I think Matt Flynn was the quarterback or something, and I'm in the room like screaming because Tulane like started out really hot and they actually were like tied 14-all going into like halftime or going into the second quarter. So I knew like they were going to be okay. They ended up, but to me like that was a huge. I'm like, yeah, and it's like you said, like your dad's wondering what the heck do you even care for? I'm screaming for Tulane. I would never scream for Tulane. You know what I mean? And that Tom Brady one, dude, that one because that was the same game. I come over to your house, and you remember, like, you had the running back. It was like their backup running back in the game for the Patriots.
Yeah, I remember.
And you did a prop bet?
Yeah, so if he if he would have scored the first touchdown of the game, it paid like 20 to 1 or something like that, like insane amounts of money. And I think was it Corey Dillon at the time, or was it who was that other guy? Anyway,
Dillon sounds familiar to me though on that.
I don't think it was. It was the one right behind him. And had he scored the first touchdown, and I put like $5 down, so it would have only been like $100. But back then, that was right
That's
now.
a lot.
Yeah.
No, but it was a lot of money
Yeah.
back then. Even $20 was a lot of
And
money.
I remember he broke the tackle and was cruising down the outside, and he got tripped up at like the 3-yard line. And I remember I was so ticked off because first play, he's in the backfield. I'm like, okay, they're going to hand it to him. He's going to score. First play action, like incomplete pass. Second play action, incomplete pass. I'm like, they better just run the freaking ball. Third play action. I think they threw it to Mike Vrabel or something, or Teddy Bruschi. And I was ready to lose my mind.
Dude, in that same game, so you may not remember this, but you still had the bet like going on later on with the running back. And I was betting on the same game because me and you, we did a pretty good job. You and I did at, making sure we calibrated before the games, like making sure we're on the same page. Let's make sure we make the same bets. But we were kind of going against each other in this sense because
didn't you have the over on Tom Brady passing touchdowns?
I needed him to have three passing touchdowns, and I would win.
I needed him to have under 3.
And I think you either had to have the guy have a touchdown run or like under 3. And at the end of the game, he did a play action, and he threw it into the end zone for Randy Moss, and he caught a touchdown. It was his 3rd touchdown pass. And I'm jumping up and screaming, and you got pissed. And you were saying that you didn't want your dad to hear because you didn't want him to get us in trouble. But I think you were pissed because I won the bet. I don't know. But what I'm saying is this is stupid. You're at the goal line, and obviously as a fan of a team, and we've all been there, if you're a fan of a team, you do the play that's going to be most successful for your team. But these things such as sports betting and fantasy sports make you think irrationally. It's stupid. It's a dumb way to go about it. And you know what also frustrates me is, I guess you could call it a positive in a sense, but I don't consider it a positive. But you get these people, like everybody becomes an expert when it comes to fantasy. Have you ever done a fantasy draft where you're like doing the draft live on like ESPN.com or whatever you're doing it on, whichever app, whichever network, and then everyone's making a comment like, that was a stupid pick. What are you doing? He only rushed for 1,000 yards. Everyone becomes an expert in your league, like 12 people.
Yeah, well, it's because they all read the ESPN. They're all going off the exact same sheet of paper that Eric Berry or whatever Matthew Berry put out on ESPN. But yeah, everybody becomes a pro, and then what's funny is it always seems like the idiot of your friends is the one that wins. Like the guy who's like, like honestly, that's how it always works. The guy that doesn't know anything about football is the winner. It's like the league where Taco wins. Like it's just he doesn't even know what he's doing. Yeah,
it's really irritating. I can't stand it when, oh, Shane, you picked Devonta Freeman. What a stupid decision. You should have gone with so-and-so. You should have gone with so-and-so. And I'm like, dude, I can't look at the comments anymore. Like this year, I refuse to look at the comments when the draft started. Like before the draft, we're all, talking to each other. Once the draft started, I refuse to even look at anything because everyone thinks they're an expert. And it's usually the people who've never sat foot on any kind of field before, or a basketball court or a baseball diamond, anything, that start talking as if they're experts in the game. And it really irritates me. That's what bothers me. And they usually win.
Yeah. So usually I just try to put myself in their shoes and pick like them. And it works.
Yeah, there you go. Now, here's the thing. Why do you think they win? Like, does fantasy, in your opinion, take any skill? I want your honest thoughts here. I've thought about this the last couple weeks. Does it take any skill to win in fantasy?
Yes and no. It also takes like timing. Like if someone gets hurt, it's being the first one to pick up the backup or that type of thing. But like as far as like the draft. Yeah, I think it takes a little bit of knowledge and skill to have a decent team, but like we just talked about, the moron usually does the best. Like not moron, but just the one who literally doesn't care about it and didn't put in any time. It was just like, I like this guy's name, and so he drafts him, and all of a sudden he goes off every week for 3 touchdowns.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think it takes skill. But I just remember fantasy baseball a couple years ago. Like I put in hours and hours and hours before the draft, like lining up, like going through every scenario, who I would draft if this guy was taken, and like had a spreadsheet with multiple pages, different scenarios, and what my team would be lacking if I took this player or if I took that player. And that was the worst fantasy baseball team I've ever had. I think I came in 9th out of 10 people, and it was just a garbage team. So yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with luck. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I do think there is strategy, like you said. Like there's strategy. You have to know who's good, but like realistically, I mean,
real quick.
Go ahead.
To my defense, like that team I drafted was insane. Like it was the best hitting, like most home runs, most RBIs, most runs, and halfway through the season, I was like, my season's done. So I was building up for the next year where I was going to start acquiring picks by trading off these players who were underperforming. So like I had Edwin Encarnacion, I had Brian Dozier, and all these other players like Carlos Gonzalez, all these guys that could just straight up mash the ball. And it was like the second I traded them, their bat turned into like a tennis racket with superpower, like everything. They were launching home runs like crazy. The pitchers I traded away started throwing freaking fire. And I think had I kept that team, I probably would have crawled into the playoffs and then won the championship. So, I mean, it's just like you said.
So the timing there, though, was bad. Like, I mean, but you couldn't tell that was going to happen, could you?
No.
So it was all luck.
Yeah.
See, that's what frustrates me, man. And the people who you think don't know sports, they end up winning because they have a couple players that get really lucky. I had that same thing happen to me with Devonta Freeman. That's why I drafted in the next year after that, because I think it was not last year, but the year before, he was the top scoring running back in fantasy. And I picked him up, and I got a lot of heat for that because I liked him a lot. I thought he might be good, but they were doing the whole like two-back set. Nobody knew, but he ended up being the top scoring running back. Yeah. But that was really lucky. I was just trying to pick someone up that I thought was going to get a little bit of points. He got really so I don't take any credit for that. I don't think I did anything like extra studying for it. It just happened to be that Coleman went down, or whoever their other Tevin Coleman, whoever their other guy went down, and then Freeman ended up getting some carries and did well, and then took over the majority of the snaps. So
yeah, I mean, like, who would have known that just your Kareem Hunt's the freaking man at running back? And,
exactly.
Well, truthfully, I think if you drafted Adrian Peterson this year, you're a moron because the writing was on
I'm
the wall.
an idiot.
Are you kidding me?
Well,
where did you draft him?
6th round, 7th round.
Yeah, you're a moron.
Yeah, I was.
What were you thinking?
I had taken a quarterback, a receiver. So here's my first.
Who was still left on the board at that point?
I can't remember. Not a lot though.
Not a lot. 6th round. That was a dumb.
No. It was later in the draft. But here's the 3 I took first, which I think was a stupid decision on my part. I took Devonta Freeman, who's actually done okay.
I don't think that's stupid.
But I also took Des Bryant and Aaron Rodgers. Those 3, I should never have taken a quarterback that high, never. And then that was where I made my first mistake. But I took those 3. I gambled on Des, and I shouldn't have taken Rodgers. Then I still could have gotten a decent quarterback.
I think a quarterback's important. Like I remember like reading it's always like take running back. You can always get receivers or quarterbacks later. But I think a quarterback's important.
So I took AP on a gamble, and I can't remember who else was. There was some other running, like the dude from the Jets, Powell, I believe is his name. Howard from Chicago was available, and I'm trying to think.
Kareem Hunt.
Hunt was gone by then. Somebody else had picked him up in like the 3rd round, who was actually killing it in that league. But yeah, I was an idiot. I drafted AP. I dropped him after 2 weeks. I did not realize. Bless you. I did not realize that. He was going to be that bad. But I remember talking to you. You might not even remember this, but you said, I think he's done. And I was like, oh, great. That was before the season even started, and he didn't do one thing, and he still hasn't. He's on the trading block right now. Rumor has it. So, I don't know. That was a really bad decision. So, yes, I'm an idiot. No, I am.
Yeah, that was really
I'm not a guru.
Yeah.
I just put that on my name as a podcast. I just like to act like I am.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, man, it irritates me because it is a lot of luck, though. It really is. These people get really lucky. And then what also happens, and we were just talking about this earlier, and I think one of the NFL players actually came out and said something. I can't remember who it was, but they said something about how fantasy sports has ruined sympathy and empathy, whatever you want to call it, of the fans, because the fans are so worried about their points that they get so mad when a player gets hurt, or they cheer so much when a player gets hurt. They don't care about the actual player. They're more focused on their fantasy points. So Odell Beckham Jr., I actually have him in one of my leagues, so that sucks. But that's not the only person to go down. I got lost Greg Olsen, Odell Beckham Jr., and Brandon Marshall in that league. So I've lost all of them. So anyways, the players go down, and the people cheer for him. And I get it. And I think it's just part of it. I think people start rooting for injuries. Have you seen that before in any of your fantasy sports? Not necessarily football, but I don't know. Baseball has a lot of injuries, but
no, I don't think I've ever sat there and cheered for a guy to get hurt. not like that.
Not
anyway.
for fantasy purposes or anything.
Yeah, no.
I cheer for injuries. I'll be straight up honest. When somebody hurts themselves on the Eagles, I'm whatever. But that's just because I'm such a passionate fan. I'm terrible when it comes to like feeling sorry for other players. But that's how I am.
That's
but
fine. I think that's
I've said some bad things in my day, but I think that just comes from my competitive nature. I don't think it was necessarily fantasy, but I have seen people get, for their fantasy purposes, like, yes, I'm playing so-and-so next week, and Odell's broke his leg, so he's out. Yeah. I'm like, and I think that, it speaks a lot because a lot of people, they stop caring about the actual players themselves. They think of them as numbers and not necessarily athletes or individuals.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Like, I'd probably be the same. Like, if I was going up against Odell Beckham, I'd be like, oh, great, I don't have to play him. I don't think I'm sitting there saying, oh, I'm so glad he shattered his ankle.
I think you're a better person than me.
Yeah, well, I guess so.
Good job. I'm so blessed to have a friend like Myles is my best friend. If you guys haven't figured that out by now. Yes, he is.
No,
he thinks he's not, but he is. He's going to be my best friend no matter what he says. So Myles is my best friend, and I'm so grateful for him to be such a good example in my life. So is there anything, though, like that you think that's positive that comes from fantasy as far as like, it can cause us to be irrational fans. There's a lot of luck that's involved, but what do you see as like a positive?
I think it brings fans that wouldn't necessarily be fans kind of into it. Like,
okay,
I always liked baseball, and it probably wasn't my favorite sport. It was probably football was my favorite sport, and then maybe basketball. But since like I started playing fantasy baseball maybe 7 years ago with this league. Like, baseball is probably my favorite sport now because I really pay so much attention to it, and it's cool to see like the different intricacies, and like you're paying attention to the players down in the minors and watching them come up, and you're just paying more attention to the league itself. And I think people do that with football and everything. Like, still NFL, I really don't even care about the NFL, to be 100% honest. And the only time I do really now is when I'm playing fantasy or when the Niners are relevant. It's just more of like a kind of a mind-numbing thing to watch on Sundays to relax. But like, fantasy baseball is right up there, or baseball because of fantasy is right up there with college football for me.
I totally agree. That was one of the points I wanted to make, and just to kind of bounce off that is like it does bring in these non-traditional fans, people who may not have been paying attention to the sports. It at least brings them in and gets the exposure to those particular sports that you might not have gotten beforehand. I think it's a lot more analytic in nature as far as like you're thinking numbers all the time, so. You're also bringing in the people that specifically only look at like mathematical formulas, and I guess
like those guys on FanDuel and whatever DraftKings, like they've built algorithms to run those and figure out, and so they'll make, which is unfortunate because like that kind of ruins it for everybody else because now you're going up against a computer instead of a human. Not saying we're dumber than computers, but we are when it comes to that. Yeah.
Well, we're not dumber than a Mac. We're dumber than PCs though.
Definitely.
But no, you're right though. They build out the algorithms and stuff, but it is a mathematical thing. So, it's kind of cool though to see like you'll get like the people that they're the math people. They're not necessarily the fans of sports, and they come in and they start playing fantasy and they try to and you get to interact with different types of people in that sense. Like if you're in a league, sometimes you're in a league with your buddies that you've been in like for a while, but then you invite some random people sometimes and you get to know people. I guess that's a cool thing. You get to, interact with different types of people. So that's good. But like I'm saying, I think it's good for the people that never watched the sport that now are, but for the true traditional quote unquote fans, I honestly believe that fantasy kind of has that negative impact. What's your final thoughts on fantasy? Like what do you think it does? Is it good or bad for the sports or both?
I think it's good. Like I really do. I think we just talked about it brings in more fans. Obviously like people kind of skews like their mindset towards a game. Like you played Aaron Rodgers, like you're literally praying for something that's not going to happen. I need Aaron Rodgers to absolutely destroy the Cowboys and the Cowboys to still win, although that almost happened, but like it's not usually going to happen that way. So I think it's a positive. Like it makes sports more fun. To the average fan. Like you're very passionate about sports, and I feel like I'm kind of on that same level as well. Like I'll definitely yell, curse, and throw things, punch stuff, but most other fans probably aren't like that. And I think fantasy kind of helps them get to like a little more involved, or else it's just kind of a pastime, or I don't know. that makes sense.
No,
I'm just
absolutely.
rambling.
No, I like it. So we'd like to hear you guys' thoughts. So if you listen to the podcast, find us on Facebook. Well, find me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll have the posts out there. If you guys have anything to say, please leave a comment, get in on the discussion, whether you think fantasy is good or bad for fans. You heard it from Myles, though. He thinks it's good. It's good for the sport, I should say, because of what it does. It helps bring people in, stuff like that. So, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. One more time, though, find me on Instagram, find me on Twitter, find me on Facebook. And if you go to iTunes or Stitcher, please leave me a review. It would be much appreciated. And also, one last time, find Myles on 60 Days to Living. Find his YouTube channel. Find his Facebook page. 60, the number 60, days, the number 2, living. Find it. Listen to him. Like we said, he'll be halfway through his 100-day challenge. But if you want to watch the last half and you haven't watched anything now, this is where he's going to start making bank. So the last 50 days. So check out his vlog. And as always, we'll talk to you next week.